portrayed to you as the Earth and the universe?
Talking model, isn't that called the heliocentric model?
Yeah, but we got to stop right there real quick before we continue. A scientific theory is not a systemized belief. A systemized belief is a religion. So if you're claiming that the globe is a system of beliefs, then you're basically saying it's a religion or a philosophy at best.
Well,
continue.
Kind of, but the definition of theory is a system of ideas intended to explain something.
Could religions be theories, right? Could we take any religion you want to pick, and could we say that religion is a theory as to God, a creator, a prophet, certain theological beliefs?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense if it's a system of ideas. Yeah,
fair point. The problem is we're now all confused because you're starting by talking about science, and then you use the word theory, and then you give a definition that it doesn't have to do with science. A scientific theory is a specific thing, which is not the definition you gave or the explanation you gave.
Isn't science like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like proof, isn't it? Do you get me? It's facts based on observation.
No.
What is science?
Okay. Science in the way in which we're using science in this arena, right? When people say there's scientific evidence of the globe, okay? Scientific is about cause and effect relationships that are validated by experimentation. Okay, so a theory in a scientific theory comes after an observation of the natural world, a phenomena that occurs within it, a hypothesis about if this occurs, then maybe it causes that phenomena, the effect. You then have a rigorous, you then have a rigorous experimental phase of validation that will either validate your hypothesis or nullify your hypothesis. Once all that is complete, then you can start having a scientific theory. So that being said, since you use the word science, where is any of that for the idea that the Earth is a globe?
Okay, so first of all, I apologize for saying science is, I mean, sorry, as far as a religion is a theory, I'd say it's more of a hypothesis then, isn't it?
No.
Because if it's, so with that, why is, I'm a bit confused with that, because like, wouldn't it be a hypothesis because it's what you think is happen, like what you think, but you haven't observed it yet. It hasn't been tested.
Not in a scientific sense.
Same thing you're talking about.
It's just an idea.
Yeah, exactly. Hypothesis.
Right, but you see, a hypothesis in regards to science is a specific thing. Just because it's the same word doesn't mean it's the same thing. You know, in general common language, yes. So in general common language, a hypothesis is just the underlying belief, right? Of why you hold a proposition to be true. That is not what a hypothesis is in the scientific method.
What is a hypothesis?
It's a specific if-then statement that's validatable. For example, if 180 degrees Fahrenheit applied to water, then water boils at sea level, right? And then you can validate that by demonstrating it. So, for example, let me give you an example of something that doesn't apply. Okay, there is a blue knife on my table, right? Not a scientific proposition. It simply is the case that there's a blue knife on my table.
Yeah, because you observed it.
Yes, directly. The object in question is directly observed. There's no causal relationships required, right? Now, I want you to ask me questions about my knife.
Okay.
So ask
There's
me
your
questions
knife.
about it.
What questions do you want about your knife? Is it sharp?
You think of the questions. You think of the questions that you would need to ask to divine what it is, because it is a knife of a certain type. So start asking questions like maybe the size of it.
Okay. How big is the knife?
7 inches long. Okay, stop. Don't continue. Did I need to do any science to get that answer?
Need to measure it.
Oh, there you go. All right. I pass it to my friend who was talking to you earlier.
Okay.
Is that my cue?
I think so.
You can take a napalm.
Sure. So, yeah, the measurement isn't science, right? Is that what we were just talking about?
Yeah.
I thought it was a part of science.
It's not. Measurement is just measuring something.
Yeah, it can be a tool used in science, but it wouldn't be science itself, right?
So it's to measure. I'm a bit confused. So it's part of science, but it's not scientific.
Yeah, so like AI was saying, in this realm, right, in this arena, we talk about science, natural science, which is the study of the natural world through experimentation, right? So we observed something in nature. We observe an effect, right? So let's go back to when he was talking about water and heat. So you and I are walking along and we come upon a boiling pool of water. And we've never seen this before. We look at it and we're like, oh, wow, this water's boiling. And then we come up upon it and we realize there's steam, and we kind of touch it briefly and we realize, oh man, this is hot. This feels exactly like the fire back where we came from. I'm wondering what's going on here, right? I feel heat within the water and I see it boil. So maybe we could form some sort of hypothesis as to why the water is boiling. Maybe it's because of the heat. So we go back to our campsite and we try this. We take some water, we put it over the fire, and it hits a certain temperature over time, and it starts to boil. So we can do this over and over again, and it's repeatable. So we have a variable that we're manipulating, which is the heat. We're putting the water on top of the heat, taking the water off the heat, stops boiling. So we're manipulating a variable that we think is the cause of the effect that we're seeing, which is the water boiling. So then we come to the scientific theory that heat causes water to boil. And we've demonstrated this through experimentation, right? So the key to all of this. Now, if we saw from a distance, really far off in the distance, a pool of water that seemed to be boiling, but we had no interaction with that pool of water, and we just started coming up with ideas as to what may cause that water to boil. If we don't touch that water, or we don't look at that water, or we don't try to take water ourselves and figure out what can cause this boiling, do any of our stories that we may come up with as to what is causing the water to boil, do you think any of those would be relevant?
It would be a hypothesis. So
let's say you have a hypothesis. So we're viewing this water that's boiling in a distance. We've never seen anything like this take place before. We're familiar with regular water. We've got some around us. What is your hypothesis as to why that water we see in the distance is boiling.
Because it's warm.
Let's come up with another hypothesis as to why water is boiling. We have no idea. We've never seen this take place. We would have no inkling or indication as to what may be the cause. Throw out an idea.
I have absolutely no idea why water would be boiling.
Well, we could maybe say that we think that there's some sort of entity or being that lives within this water that is somehow below the surface, which is causing this thing to take place, right?
Yeah.
We'll make up a name for it. You pick the name.
It's unicorns.
Okay, so unicorns.
Read that in the chat, you copper. You want to cheat.
So our hypothesis is that we've got these unicorns, whatever these may be, that are underneath the water that are causing this agitation that we see that looks like little bubbles. Now, what would be the first thing we would do to test this hypothesis?
I would try and see if we can find these by ourselves. I'd try and observe one of these little unicorns.
Right. So we never experience these unicorns. We don't see them. We have no viable reason whatsoever to believe that, one, these unicorns even exist, and two, that we would have the ability to find them, and three, that maybe if they got in the water that they would cause this effect.
Rule that hypothesis out. It's not true. We cannot observe it.
Right. We haven't observed it. But if we have no other viable hypothesis, can we just claim that since that's our best hypothesis, that it must be true? Nobody else has come up with another one. You can't think of another one. Nobody has done any experiment with water to figure out what may cause it to do the thing that we're seeing off in the distance. But we have this postulation that it's unicorns. And then everybody starts to catch on to our story. We start talking around town. Yeah, that water off in the distance that we can't get to, but we see it and it boils. Yeah, it's these unicorns. Really? No, yeah. And then we start coming up with more stories about the unicorns, the color of their fur, how they can breathe underwater, all kinds of different things, right? Now, if we tell these stories, we tell these stories long enough and nobody ever actually touches the water, goes to the water, tries to do any experimentation whatsoever regarding the water, does that make our theory, because it's the only one that we have, a viable theory?
It's the right hypothesis. Well, I mean, it's the wrong opinion, but
we haven't proven
it's the wrong hypothesis,
right? Because we haven't done an experiment. That's the whole point. We need to do an experiment in order to come up with a viable hypothesis, right?
Or you could observe these unicorns.
So let me ask you a question. When it comes to what you believe in, the heliocentric model, globe Earth, all of this stuff, has any of it been scienced? Is any of it even a question of science? So it's been observed.
It's been observed.
Right. So what in particular has been observed?
Curvature.
Curvature's been observed. Where is this taking place?
What do you mean?